Why did none of you tell me how good Superman and Lois is? I can't believe I went so long without watching this show because it has very quickly become my all-time favorite Superman adaptation. I know, it's crazy that I'm saying this about a series that aired on the CW, but they found a way to transcend the restraints of that network to make a truly great superhero show. And I know we aren't exactly spoiled for choices when it comes to good Superman adaptations, but I can confidently sit here and tell you just how great this show was. There were so many times I was genuinely shocked that this was a network TV show with how inventive the writing was and how good it looked. Superman and Lois blew me away and exceeded all my expectations. I binged the entire thing in an embarrassing amount of time. And my eyes are still wet from the tears I cried watching that finale. This show is honestly just so super, man. Please do yourself a favor and go watch the show right now. Seriously, I'll wait. It's already been over for a few months, but it is a life-changing experience seeing this series. You'll get a lot more out of it than hearing me talk about all the things I thought were cool in this series for 15 minutes. I'm gonna spoil some stuff in this video anyway, so here's your warning and one last cry out for you to go and watch Superman and Lois. It is a miracle this show even exists at all, considering how protective DC has been over the character in live action, but especially considering just how good it really is. I really can't stress that enough. This show is so good. I will glaze it all day and night, I don't care. Not nearly enough people talk about it for how great of a modern take on Superman that it is. A huge reason as to why that is because of Tyler Hoechlin's Superman. There is zero doubt in my mind that he is the best Superman we have ever gotten, whether it be in film, television, animation, or even that one credit card ad with Jerry Seinfeld that aired on the 17th, I think. Look up Seinfeld 17 for more information on that. But no matter the adaptation, Tyler is the Superman for me. That may be a hot take, and I probably just started World War III in the comments, but he brings so much to this role that I've wanted to see for years, and even some things I didn't know that I wanted. I love how he portrays an older Superman who still hasn't lost sight of hope. This is a version of the character whose days fighting Lex Luthor are far in the past. He's got more experience than anyone on the planet for this job, and despite everything the world has thrown at him, he remains hopeful. For a character who's been done time and time again, it's really refreshing to see a version of Superman who is a veteran crime fighter with a wealth of knowledge and life lessons that he's happy to pass on. I also hate to take shots sometimes, but this is a take on a realistic Superman that works so much better for me than the Cavill version ever did. Tyler gets much better material to work with for starters, but due to the nature of a series, we get so much more time to spend with him. We get to see Superman operating at his best and at his worst, and it's the range of emotions Tyler brings to the surface that really elevates this character. He's someone who you'd feel comfortable with, which is arguably the most important trait your Superman could have. We've all seen this clip more times than some family members in recent years, but for good reason. The warmth he radiates as Superman brings him down to earth in such a crucial way that makes the character work. He's as empathetic and compassionate as they come, and it does a lot to make him feel like the beloved global icon he should be. But then, in the rare instances where Superman is pushed over the edge, Tyler is able to unleash a scary amount of rage that feels realistic and in character for Clark. He knows when to put on a smile and when to scare someone, and I think that's incredibly effective for selling him as just not the most powerful person on the planet, but most importantly, the most human. But here's the thing, even with how great his Superman is, that's not even the thing he's best at. What's so cool about Tyler is that he plays two roles on this show. He plays that other guy, Clark Kent, really well. And I keep seeing conspiracy theories that Clark Kent and Superman are the same person, but Clark literally has glasses on, so that can't— What? Did everyone else know about this but me? I thought he was playing two different people the entire time. Okay, well now that I know they're the same character, I can stop doing this bit and outright say that Tyler is the best Clark Kent. And that is where he shines the brightest in the series. Despite the show being called Superman and Lois, we mostly get to see him operating as Clark, which I love. And don't get me wrong, we still get a healthy amount of Superman in the show, but the focus is on Clark here. It's a smart move because it forces them to make these stories more engaging so you aren't missing the action. And then when Superman does show up, it hits like crack in a way that it wouldn't if he was there all the time. And more often than not, in these Superman adaptations, we don't get to see enough of Clark Kent's life. People want to focus on the larger-than-life action or the implications of a super being on Earth, and in doing so, they skip over the most important part of his character. Clark is there to humanize Superman, and this show understands that. We get to spend so much time with the man in the underwear and see what makes him tick, and I can't tell you enough how endearing that is. He brings so much life to every scene he's in through charm alone that you can't help but smile seeing him. Whether it be seeing his unashamed love of professional wrestling, which immediately made me adore him more, or seeing him fumble his way through life, he feels like a real, fully developed person. And not just any kind of person, but that wholesome dad you can't help but love. His dorkiness is so genuine in the most charming possible ways, and is exactly how a mild-mannered southern farm boy should be acting. Tyler is also able to portray such a powerful amount of vulnerability as both Clark and Superman, which is incredibly effective. It shows just how human he really is when he's doubting himself or he's scared, even with all those powers. And despite any insecurities he may have, he still prioritizes being the beacon of hope the world needs. He goes out of his way to be there for everyone in his life, helping anyone in need, and above all else, loves his family. For a Superman so late into his career, it's a unique trait of his to have all these extra people to care about, and it is a massive focal point of the series. I really enjoy seeing just how fiercely protective Clark is of his family too. He won't hesitate to drop whatever he's doing to be there for them. My favorite example of that by far is when John's girlfriend's dad, Emmett, hits John, and then Clark immediately goes to find him. When Lois tells him,
"This is not a job for Superman,"
and he replies,
"He's not going,"
it goes insanely hard. Tyler absolutely kills that angry father role, and it is so satisfying to see that bozo get embarrassed. A guy like me would have thrown him into the sun personally, but I guess that's why I'm not Superman. He perfectly balances the nerdiness with this overwhelming passion that feels so natural, and when push comes to shove, it's nice to see him lock in and get angry. As much as I adore that wholesome, happy-go-lucky version of Clark, we need times like that where he gets angry to see this wide range of emotions on full display. And I really appreciate that this version of Clark isn't flawless. He's very clearly doing the best he can, but he doesn't have all the answers or always approach things in the right way. Sometimes his methods of parenting isn't the best way to go about things, or he has trouble communicating, and it just makes him feel more relatable and is exactly what I want to see out of this character. He effortlessly brings it all to life as this three-dimensional hero that you instantly fall in love with and are only given more reasons to admire with each new episode. And it's not just me who feels this either. This show does a fantastic job at showing you why the public resonates so much with Superman. Setting the series in Smallville is a brilliant move that lets you see the effect he has on such a tight-knit community. We get to see Superman both help them and cause problems for them, which creates such an interesting dynamic that is electric to watch. You can immediately see the impact he has on the world as he's improving lives in a very satisfying way, naturally building these relationships with the locals. And I also love how combative Clark is with the DoD. He has a working relationship with them, but if they get in his way, he will happily go against them. Superman should never hold himself to obeying orders from people, and they do a great job showing how Clark is always operating in favor of the greater good, not government agencies. He's there for the people of Smallville, and on a much larger scale, Earth. So God, does it hurt when they f***ing killed him? I was not expecting them to do the death of Superman in this show, but holy shit, they handled it in such an interesting way. Firstly, I need to say how much I love this Doomsday design because he looks perfect, but secondly, they literally killed it with this arc. The fact that it comes out of nowhere catches you off guard, but in a really good way as they lean into that with the story. Also, I don't care if I get assassinated by Warner Brothers for this, but I need to show you this clip because I fully stood up with this needle drop. That goes so crazy, man. This show has the sauce. Superman is dead, and now the world has to deal with the ramifications of it all. You can see how hurt Smallville is by it, and how much worse off they are without him, and more importantly, how hard it is for his family when he's gone. He leaves behind this irreplaceable void, and the show takes its time to explore that and the full ramifications of a world without both Clark and Superman. It is bold to do that and take Superman out of the Superman show, but I really appreciate that they did it because it holds such a heavy weight that only makes me appreciate this take on the character more. But who is Superman without his better half, the woman who puts the and Lois in Superman and Lois? Their relationship is by far the strongest part of the entire series and what kept me coming back episode after episode. Every single interaction they have is so captivating. You can't fake this kind of chemistry, people. They feel like a real couple in every sense. It's honestly both impressive and scary how they pull this off. You'd think they've been married for 15 years in real life with how authentic their relationship feels. I could never do what they do. I'd be leaving the set asking, what are we at that point? What I love most about their dynamic is how they challenge each other. Not in like an antagonistic way, but they're constantly working through disagreements in a healthy way that I think is incredibly important to portray in a show like this. Things aren't going to be perfect between the two all the time, and that's okay. They do their best to work through it together because they care about each other, and you can feel every ounce of that love they have. Communication is a priority for them as they operate like a true team. They call out to each other when they need to and are there to balance each other out, especially when they get intimate with each other because they can be wilding sometimes, and that is very accurate to the Lois and Clark I love. love. Now, this may come as a shock to you, but I think that Bitsie Tulloch is by far the best Lois Lane we've ever gotten. Frustratingly often, we hardly get to see Lois be an actual character outside of her relationship with Clark. This show manages to completely avoid that by putting Lois front and center, and God, is it so refreshing to see. Lois Lane is such a cool character in her own right, and I'm so relieved that this show made it a priority to highlight why that is. There's a reason why her name is in the title. She gets just as much focus as Superman, and it warms my heart. I have so many good things to say about Bitsie's Lois that I don't even know where to start. Okay, actually that's a lie. This is all in my script, so I know exactly where to start, which is with her characterization, because it is all you could ever want in a Lois Lane. It says a lot that they can do such a different take on her in the mainstream, with Lois being a working mother whose glory days are behind her, but still have her perfectly embody everything that Lois should. She's an act first, ask questions later kind of woman who will do whatever it takes to get her story published. Happy to kick down any door that's in her way because she is just that determined. As brave as they come and incredibly resourceful, she is capable all on her own without ever needing Superman to save her. A strong and independent woman who isn't afraid to ask for help when she gets in over her head and needs support from her friends and family. She's also very assertive and will make her voice known. As the best damn journalist there is for a reason, but she's also overflowing with more love than she knows what to do with. Bitsie approaches Lois with so much wit, warmth, and care that you adore her from the moment you meet her. She is a hero in her own right and someone who puts her journalism to good use by exposing corruption in ways that Superman never could. While she may be most comfortable out in the field, she's uncomfortable in her own skin and struggling with insecurities that cut deep and show that even the most confident of people have a hard time fully loving themselves. And just like Clark, she has her own litany of flaws, but it's those imperfections that make her perfect and feel like a real person. She's ridiculously relatable, and you understand right away why Clark is willing to risk it all for her. She brings out the best in everyone around her in her own special ways. I owe everything to these writers for giving Lois so much agency in these stories they tell. She's not just tagging along for the ride and doing whatever Superman is doing. No, she is actively making important choices that affect the overall directions these stories go. They let Lois get out there and take action with bold decisions that are really interesting to watch play out. Whether that be investigating a multiversal cult or meeting with crime lords, she's doing things that Clark never could or even would. Lois is allowed to have her own character arcs, supporting characters and dynamics with people that we don't get to see nearly enough in superhero adaptations. I realize now as I'm saying all this that this kind of stuff sounds like the bare minimum for female characters, which it is, but this show does it all so well that I need to give them credit for making sure Lois is just as big of a deal as Superman is. The best example of this is how the show completely recontextualizes Clark and Lex's rivalry by making Lex a villain for Lois. It's a genius move to have Lex want revenge on Lois for wrongfully imprisoning him, as it creates an entirely new dynamic that they explore in some really exciting ways, as Lois can't just punch her way out of this situation. It allows her to take the spotlight and push the narrative forward in her own ways, which Clark also does on his side of things, and it results in some very well-developed storylines that do all of these characters justice. I am so glad that they do Lois Lane right and treat her like the badass journalist she is, because her stories are often the highlight of this series. One of my favorite things this show does is give Lois breast cancer. Oh, okay, I know that sounds bad, but just hear me out. Season 3 introduces the massive curveball of Lois's cancer diagnosis, which turns the entire show on its head. She effectively becomes the main character that season as we watch her go through some of the most heartbreaking and heart-wrenching moments I've seen in superhero storytelling. I'll never forget the moment we found out what was happening to her, as she says it for the first time to comfort someone and talk them off the ledge. Her strength as she admits it and Clark's reaction broke me. I cried like a little baby. It's not often that you see Superman cry, and seeing them embrace each other pushed me over the edge. They do such a great job making you care about these characters, man. Lois's journey over this season is understandably emotional, but I was not prepared for how in-depth they get with it. Watching her struggle to love her body after getting a mastectomy is so hard, but Clark's reaction to it and inspirational words on how she's still the most beautiful woman in the world to him had me ready to believe in true love. That is unparalleled levels of Riz right there. You know what, on second thought, is it appropriate to say Riz in the cancer section of the video? What I will say though is that when it comes to the cancer, we get to explore one of my favorite aspects of Superman storytelling, when Clark can't save someone. He's the most powerful being in the universe, but even he can't stop something like cancer from happening. Seeing that fear in his face as he can't help the love of his life for the first time ever is just another way they humanize him, and it does wonders in selling the gravity of the situation. When Superman is scared, you can't help but get invested. And it's really cool what the writers do in this season with Clark too, as we get to see him learn how he can help Lois in other ways. Like attending group therapy and talking to other people with loved ones going through the same treatment, or holding Lois accountable and making sure she takes care of herself. It's basically an entire season of drama built around this one plot point, but it never gets tiring because of how well they develop these characters and stories. You want to see them go through every little moment as the entire cast pours their heart and soul into some incredibly powerful scenes. I can't recommend that show enough for that plot alone. It shows an entirely new side to these characters and is something that every Superman fan should see. Even if you don't like Superman as a character, I think you'll enjoy that plotline because it fleshes him and Lois out in such refreshing ways. I sound way too enthusiastic about cancer, but I'm sorry, it's good storytelling. And while we're talking about the new things Superman and Lois experience together, they're parents in this show. 3,400 words into this, and I just got to talking about their children. Oh my god, I yap way too much. How do you all put up with me? Clark and Lois have two 14-year-old boys in this show, Jordan and Jonathan. I want to stress again that they're supposed to be 14 years old when this show starts and 17 by the end of it, because with some of the scenarios they're in, I often forget that.
Also, one of their faces changes because the actor gets recast. The show doesn't really make note of it, but I just think it's funny that this scene is supposed to be the same as this scene, and it's just a completely different actor when we pick up with them in the next episode. So when you're watching this video and you see some random third kid pop up, just know that this is the same character.
I think it's really interesting to see a Superman adaptation focus on him this late into his career. Most versions I can think of start out at the beginning, which makes sense considering that's where all of his iconic stories and moments are, but I love that Superman and Lois highlights just how much being parents would change both of their lives. It immediately makes all these stories feel fresh and new with added risks and character dynamics to explore, especially the drama that comes with Jordan getting powers while Jonathan is left defenseless. It immediately creates this natural sense of inadequacy within Jonathan that the show does a fantastic job diving deep into. They deserve all the credit for just how good of a job they do showing how giving a teenager the powers of a god would impact their life. We get to see the stress that comes with these powers coming in at the worst time and how to handle it, or Jordan having to learn not to abuse these powers for his own benefit, and especially the pain that comes with having to hide those abilities from the people you love when you just want to help people. It's very interesting to see from the perspective of Superman, as Clark has been through all of that and can try to make this easier with his past life experiences, and then in the times where his own life lessons don't work, it's very compelling to see him grow as a parent to help his kids out in a way that only someone as caring as Clark could. And I also love that even with all these superpowered people surrounding her, Lois is basically in charge of the household, and that no matter how strong the kids are, she's able to care for them and give them the valuable life lessons they need to hear. She is a constant voice of reason in the Kent family, which comes in handy a lot when her kids somehow end up at parties drinking until the sun comes up. And like, maybe I'm just boring, but I was not doing that at 14 years old. My ass was at home watching Earth's Mightiest Heroes reruns. Picking up with Lois and Clark when they have teenage children also grounds the show in a really fresh way as they've settled down in Smallville rather than Metropolis. We still get to see Metropolis and in some incredible flashback episodes showing how the two of them met, but seeing the two of them back in Smallville with a family is a fresh take that allows them to adapt with these new struggles. Like how hard it is to maintain a secret identity when you're around the same people every single day and how you can't draw too much attention to yourself. It adds a lot of small-scale drama that we don't get nearly enough of in these Superman adaptations, and I really appreciate that. Jordan and Jonathan act as these two well-defined characters that add a lot to the Superman mythos and feel right at home in this show. Going into the series, I was definitely a little unsure how I'd feel about them, but they really worked for me. I will say that you can definitely feel the CW-ness of this series a lot of the time with the kids' plotlines, as they're often used as plot devices, but I'd say it's the best possible version of that we could expect. The show may be great, but it's still on the CW. They gotta stretch that budget as much as possible, and sometimes that means leaning heavily into the high school drama aspect of it all. It usually works more often than it doesn't though, which is good. Like, there's a whole subplot where Clark lets the kids play football as long as he gets to be the coach, and I think that's such a great way to show just how much he cares while the kids get to express themselves and Jordan can learn how to control his abilities on the field. This show carefully makes choices to highlight the extent of Superman having children in some very meaningful ways that makes this adaptation stand out from the rest. And it isn't just the Kent family that makes this show so special, but the entire supporting cast surrounding them that makes everything click. And considering this show is almost an ensemble with how many supporting characters there are, it's great to see how well fleshed out they all get to be. Never in my life did I expect to be invested in the personal lives of civilians in a Superman show, but god, the writing in this series is so good that they make them interesting. There are entire episodes where we don't even see Clark suit up as Superman because the small town drama is so compelling. Do you know how impressive that is, that there can be entire episodes without Superman or any action and the show still works? I didn't ever think we'd see a Superman adaptation that's so compelling that I didn't even notice when he's not there. It is ridiculously refreshing and should be the standard for not just this character, but all of these shows. Whether it be Lana Lang in the Cushing family or Lois's co-worker at the Smallville Gazette, it makes this town feel alive in a way we haven't seen since the days of Smallville itself. I have to give a special shout out to John Henry Irons because oh my god, he is the biggest surprise of this entire series for me. I can't tell you enough just how much I enjoyed his character and the arc he went through over these 4 seasons. Introducing him as this mystery character in a war suit that calls him Captain Luthor, only to reveal that he's Steel, was a fantastic subversion that I did not see coming in the slightest. I'm not gonna pretend like I know the Steel lore, the most I know I've learned against my will from that Shaq movie, but having him start out as this multiversal villain is genius. And after very briefly looking into his comic backstory, because I just realized I have free will and can Google that, I would honestly say this is an improvement for me on his comic origin. This is a prime example of how the multiverse should be used, as we get to see it create so much tension between him and Superman as he comes from an Earth where Clark was evil. As the #1 evil Superman hater, I love how this show starts out strong by dedicating an entire season to showing the audience how good this Clark is and why evil Superman sucks, but it's especially great because we get to see John come to that realization in a very natural and earned character arc. Also, the fact that he was married to Lois on his Earth is a cruel twist of the knife that adds so much depth to his character and makes for an incredibly compelling watch. I really can't say enough nice things about him. His dynamic with Clark had me hooked. The only complaint I have is that they couldn't give him this gorgeous suit design because of budget restrictions. How are you gonna let me see that and not put it in the show? I hate Warner Brothers, man. But he really was the perfect antagonist to start this show with. And honestly, all in all, this show has a great lineup of main villains. I touched on him a little bit earlier, but I need to gush over the baldest man to ever live real quick, after he shaves off that mandatory CW Lex Luthor beard at least. Michael Cudlett's Lex immediately became the definitive adaptation of Lex Luthor for me. His performance is outstanding as he covers up all this petty insecurity with this cold, calculating demeanor that begins to crack the moment something doesn't go his way. He can present as this wealthy businessman all he likes, but anyone can see just how messed up he really is. And this is the first time I've felt a version of Lex Luthor was genuinely intimidating and could go toe-to-toe with Superman. The levels of hatred we see this man stoop to rival that of the Reverse Flash. He is working overtime to win that Hater of the Year award. The visual of him stepping on Clark's heart in front of his own son is so cold and had me on the edge of my seat. This man is a menace and making it everyone else's problem. The fact that we get to see him take over a prison block and use other inmates as chairs is actually insane, and I love it so much. If I even saw this man's chrome dome in public, I would sprint the other way so fast that I'd leave a cloud of smoke behind me like a Looney Tunes character. But even with how scary he can be, his pettiness is always bubbling up under the surface just enough to take his eyes off the prize for Superman to save the day. They handled their rivalry so well as we get to see it get more personal than ever. I already talked about how much I enjoyed him having more beef with Lois for falsely imprisoning him, but the way he systematically tries to destroy Clark's family and everything he holds dear to brings out a completely different side of Clark that is so enjoyable to see. These two characters bring the best and worst out of each other, which is exactly what I want to see in my Lex and Superman rivalry. And even with how on-site their dynamic is, it warms my heart that Clark still wants to find forgiveness in Lex and set things right. It is peak Superman and shows me that the team writing this understood all these characters perfectly. We would be here all day if I got to talk about every villain in depth, and we just crossed the 5,000 word threshold, so I'm gonna speedrun talking about the rest of them in this series. Let's start with Bizarro, because I had the biggest smile on my face seeing them adapt him. He's a villain who I've always been interested in, but this show turned him into one of my favorite Superman villains in general. I absolutely love that we got to spend an entire episode of the series on Bizarro World to just see how tragic his life is. It takes a pretty one-note character and turns him into someone you actually want to see succeed. And just when you think things are gonna start to turn around for him, he dies and then becomes Doomsday in the most insane twist of the entire series. I have never cared about Doomsday and thought he was such a boring villain with one purpose and interesting storyline, but this show did the impossible and made me feel for him. I still can't believe it now, but it goes to show just how good they are at this reinvention stuff. A genuinely shocking inclusion in this series was Onomatopoeia, the Green Arrow villain who is apparently allowed to fight every other character besides Oliver Queen. Someone I never expected to see in a Superman show, let alone be this compelling. The way they used Onomatopoeia to tie Superman's intergang plot with Lois's cancer story was brilliant. I really enjoyed both Onomatopoeia and Bruno Mannheim a lot, definitely the most sympathetic villains of the entire series. They added a lot to an already heartbreaking third season. Someone who I wasn't expecting to enjoy though was Morgan Edge / Tal Rowe. Kal-El, Superman's evil half-brother. I was fully prepared for him to be a generic evil businessman, but the Kryptonian twist added a personal tie that was desperately needed, and his redemption arc over the first 2 seasons was handled really well. They had me fully cheering for this man by the end of the series. Then finally, the last big bad in the show that I want to talk about was Ali Alston, the series' take on Parasite. Ever since I saw Parasite in the ride queue for the Superman roller coaster at Six Flags, I've been very interested in that character. I know that's such a niche reference, but I think it's important you all knew that. Parasite is the most natural counter to the most overpowered superhero ever, and it means you have to get creative with your storytelling to stop them. And admittedly, this show takes a lot of creative liberties by turning Parasite into a multiversal cult leader, and while I do think she's the weakest villain of the series, I have to appreciate taking such a big swing like that. I still think it works and that they give her some interesting motivations. It's just that her scenes weren't done in the most exciting ways sometimes. What is exciting though, God, what a transition, how does he do it, are the action scenes in this series. I'm honestly amazed that they managed to make the fight scenes this good with how little they had for the budget. Despite all the massive, larger-than-life Superman action scenes we get to see, like versus Doomsday, Steel, and Bizarro, my favorite one by far is the straight-up fistfight he has with Lex under the red lighting. It's such a simple concept that I'm shocked we don't see more often as Lex levels the playing field, but with how much he's enraged Clark up to this point, he's still willing to throw hands and it leads to this immensely satisfying brawl. It's honestly scary seeing Clark get pushed this far, but so cool that he finally gets to fight Lex without needing to hold back. I know my man has dreamed of this for years. On a whole, the show does such a good job really stretching that budget. It's both a blessing and a curse because it restricts us from getting to see Superman more active in the series, but it forces the writers to get creative. And the show benefits as a whole when they have to actively think about ways to make things work in a narrative sense, and it leads to some unique ideas like Clark and Lex's first ever fist fight. Everyone please take a moment to stand up and give the writing staff a round of applause with me real quick. Woo! They absolutely deserve it for flawlessly adapting Superman and Lois in live action after all these years of suffering we've had to endure. The show effortlessly reinvents Superman for the modern day, all while maintaining that hopeful spirit I've desperately missed in live action. It is beyond refreshing to see a show that portrays him as the hopeful everyman the world can look up to, that he should be all this time. This comforting presence on the planet who instantly puts you at ease as he moves on to solve the next problem with a smile on his face. He truly loves being Superman, and it shows, but it doesn't come close to how much he loves his family. That dynamic is at the center of this wonderful series and helps elevate it from just another Superman adaptation to a fresh take on the character that explores interesting questions in a character-focused drama. As happy as I am that they got to end the show with a beautiful finale, it is a huge shame they never got to see their full 7-season plan out to the end. We were robbed of their take on Brainiac and even Darkseid. Warner Brothers are cowards for ending this show just so there weren't 2 active Superman at the same time. I would kill to see them come back for more. And maybe I will do just that. This show raised the bar for what superhero storytelling can be on network TV, and I'm really bummed it took me this long to watch it. I'm never going to be able to watch this week to week with the rest of the world, and that sucks. I can't imagine the pain you all must have gone through after that season 3 cliffhanger, waiting a whole year to see if Clark survived Doomsday or not. And while I may have missed out on that sense of community, the least I could do is recommend you all watch this show. If you made it to the end of the video and haven't seen this series, first of all, why did you do that? I spoiled so much of it. But please do yourself a favor and go enjoy the best live-action take on Superman in almost 50 years. I promise you, you won't regret it. Alright, but on that note, we've reached the 6,204 word mark, which I believe is my longest script yet, so I think that's a good place for me to finally shut up. Why don't you let me know down below what you thought of Superman and Lois? I may be 4 months late, but I would love to hear what everyone has to say and continue the conversation down below. And while you're at it, you may as well give the video a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you don't do it, I'll fist fight you in the parking lot. 3 o'clock p.m. on Monday. Be there, or else.